Energy is inherently a part of everything we do in our lives, but one of the least understood things.
I can see a future where there is limitless and free energy. And that's a pretty beautiful world to live in.
The incredible thing that is building of things, like the built environment, whether it's a huge, incredible building that was an engineering feat, whether it was an energy system, whether it was an entertainment center. I mean, you look at the size of stadiums and how they're built. I mean, what would be for you guys? What are some buildings? Because I know, Derek, you were all up on architecture. What's some of buildings that just blew your mind or have? Because I always find that really fascinating. We were talking about it, and I was like, this could be a really fun topic to dive into.
One of the first that was really drew me in. So initially I'm like really a fan of like the term brutalist, I think, has been and kind of appropriated a little bit, but the minimalist where form follows function, and therefore the art of the structure itself is just its pure functionality on display without any accoutrement, right? Without any like embellishment. It's just, and so they've kind of coined this brutalist, in the architectural space, which is a little bit derivative, and it's ultimately like in its purest form, you get this. And so long story short, I've always right up behind me is the Brooklyn Bridge. And one of that's been always stood for one of my favorite kind of pieces of structure that I think is so amazing. And part of it is that the lack of actual technology to create such a long standing, and the Golden Gate could be another example, and some of these other bridges that have been there for a long time, where you look at it from a standpoint of its functionality and its usability and its changing of the game, right? This bridge created commerce at a whole new level in really the Empire State. I mean, this is kind of the center of all, the world to some extent. Things spread out from what happened in New York, and the Brooklyn Bridge represents that, creating that. My grandfather being one of them that traveled across that bridge every day from Brooklyn to the city to go to work, and the access that created for the average, kind of working class guy to go get into the center of financial universe. And then you look at the bridge and it has a beauty to it, but that every part of that bridge is there specifically for its function. It's beautiful in its state, but there's nothing extra there really, and and then another one that always stands out to me, and it's a little bit more artistic intentionally, is the Guggenheim, as one that I've just always been fascinated with, but I'm more drawn typically to like stark angles where. And there's Bjork Ingels, the stuff he's doing at like scale, is just like bananas. There's a handful out there that are like sticking with that concept of like, don't overdo it just to overdo it. Keep that simple idea that form should follow function, and that the art and the beauty come from its functionality and its purpose first. I'm attracted to that in general. Like, and my house is that way. My desk is that way. My office is that way. Like, it kind of just is always like, how do you set it up to where it's the most useful? And there's a beauty in that. That's my take.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been blown away, even as a kid, by just, like massive scale architecture, like especially bridges, just kind of like the engineering that goes behind it. And it's like the responsibility almost. You're like, these guys just built a freaking bridge. It's got millions, hundreds of millions of people over time are going to be crossing that thing, and like it's got to work, right? Like, it's a freaking giant piece of critical infrastructure that, we're just relying on that it works, that it's standing there. It's freaking built into the Hudson River. Like, it's crazy engineering. Like,
well, think about at the time it was built and what it took to pour the forms that are the concrete that goes into the bedrock below the river at the time. Think back when that was built. I forget the date, the year, but and then bridges also, I'm with Rob. Bridges have always fascinated me, and there's part of it because of the engineering feat. Part of it is that they're typically the one structure sitting amongst a flat plane of water, right?
Mhm.
And then there's this, maybe more of an kind of the idea of what a bridge represents. It's connecting things, and it's creating opportunity, and it's creating mobility, and it's creating diversity in and of itself. And so yeah, I've always been attracted to bridges for sure, but I still love, like,
I guess it's the East River. Sorry, not the Hudson.
yeah, right. Whatever.
Says the guy from New York. Oh no.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I mean, but I back to like the general concept here that you're talking about is anything built. The thing that I'm super interested in is the idea that everything around us was once just an idea in somebody's head.
Yeah.
And that idea typically born from necessity, right? Typically born from, at some point we're sitting on rocks and they hurt our asses and whatever. And somebody goes, what if there was a rock that was perfectly shaped, or maybe somebody sat in a rock that was more perfectly shaped with a back to it and, a nice flat seat, and went, wait, what if I made this? You know what I mean? What if I could reproduce this effect this experience I'm having? Or what if I needed this in other places of my life? And then's born the idea of a chair, right? Mm-hmm. It's like anything built with an intention to serve is born out of love, right? Because in my opinion, the verb tense of love, the word love, which we all know, is really kind of, I believe, is the fabric of the universe. It's the underpinning. It's the energy that it feeds everything. What does that look like in action? And in my opinion, that's service. And so, ideas born out of the intention for service is always beautiful. And where they go wrong, where you get form that isn't necessarily beautiful, I think, is when it's not necessarily tied directly to that idea of how does it serve. And so when we're talking about the things that we're out there building, or the things that are being built all around us, where is the intention? Is the intention purely coming from profit? Right? Those things tend to look kind of ugly, whereas things that are really intentionally meant to serve have a natural beauty to them. And that's where Bjork Ingels really shines, because I think he's beyond the need for it being a profitable endeavor. He gets to just design for ultimate service to mankind, or to the environment. And I think that that's kind of imbued into what we do. The work that we've committed our lives to is that it's meant to serve many functions at one time, and all of them being a benefit to as many people as possible. And so to some extent, I love looking at that sea of modules reflecting the sky, on a roof, and at the right angle and the right lighting. And it just looks beautiful to me, because there's so much behind that, including the democratization of energy and power, and kind of that, that's just a beautiful thing.
Well, I also think buildings too, they serve as not just structures for us to either live, work, whatever in, but they also can be kind of a source for inspiration for people. I mean, when there is a really iconically designed building that also has function, right? The beauty and the function, it becomes that center point of, like, maybe that'll inspire somebody to think bigger about whatever they're working on. It maybe architecture may not be, but like, I also think a lot of the built environment is meant to inspire. Whereas I think that there is that slippery slope that can happen where it's like you go from the inspiration side of like truly making something beautiful and functional and everything, to where this is a box, it serves the purpose, check, onto the next. I think you're missing a component that I think could be essential for just growth of humanity.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that blend of form and function. Yeah, I mean, you can go like all the way. I mean, I think Bjarke Ingels does some pretty amazing things with creativity and interconnectedness, and how he brings the natural environment into the built environment in like creative, innovative ways. You can go all the way to the other side, like scale. I mean, the spectrum where you've got like Gaudi and like some of the stuff he did in Spain, like pure form almost. You think, like, looking at it, you're like, that is just some crazy architect that's just like going off the rails in terms of form. He's just building these crazy, weird, off, non-linear kinds of structures. But then, when I was there, this was like 20 years ago now, and I took the tour of his house. I forget the name of the house, Batillo House or something like that in Madrid. And it's actually all about function.
Mm.
Everything he did was about function. And it's just, he has this incredibly creative way of doing it. But that house was like a passive solar house. This is in the late 1800s. The thing has no electricity, no power, has these manually, like these automatically operated like levers that work with the air and like the natural convection of air and light hitting it. And it's like, it's incredible. And it's all built into these crazy, like weird shapes and stuff. And it looks beautiful. And like you've never seen anything like it, but it's actually all about functionality. It's totally crazy.
Side note on some of those incredibly ornate structures, the churches, the kind of that Renaissance, like, and even going back behind that, but like it turns out that they're built for resonance. And that some of what we're looking at structurally that seems so ornate and like overwrought and like just purely there for beauty and not function had a function, because these churches all had bells and organs. And I was doing a bunch of reading on this where they've been testing this kind of resonance frequency that now we know these frequencies can have healing properties, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. And that these churches were actually houses of healing and spiritual houses of, whether you ascribe to the spiritual practice of that church, it doesn't matter. It was a place where that sound, whether it was the choir singing or the bell ringing or the organ in its deep, it was creating a resonance and a frequency that was tuned and optimized based on those designs. And so they were far more advanced than we ever could imagine in how they were designed. And then, if you look at some of that, again, that ornate stuff that's on the outside of these churches with their spires and it just kind of looks like crazy. That has a purpose too, apparently, where there's energy fields that can kind of coalesce into these spires. And then some of these, kind of all the things that you see, whether it's little gargoyles or whatever, all around, sitting around the edges of the things, they all serve a visual purpose. Like if you look in nature, things are very fractalized, if you really pay attention, and that's what they were reproducing in these things. So there's typically a lot more behind what we think there is, especially if you go back in the ancient kind of architecture. There's a lot more rationale behind
pyramids,
design than we ever gave credit for,
Absolutely.
One of my favorite things to do, especially when I'm in a city, is just grab my camera and walk around. And whether I, edit the photos or whatever, that it isn't really the point. It's the idea that you're walking around all these different areas where you haven't been before, and you're just observing the built environment around you, and you notice all these subtleties in how people put together, like even a window, or how they actually construct a street corner. It's like there's all this thought that actually goes in that I think day to day we just kind of walk by. And I wanted to ask this because I find this a really interesting question. Do you think it should be intentionally out of sight, out of mind, or intentionally visual, like some of those design decisions? Because I always wonder about that, like the subtlety of design. Where do you want to emphasize versus where do you want to just let it kind of fade into the background?
I love, like, my reply to that is that I love contrast. I love juxtaposition of. So as an example, right, we got this chunk of land up in the Redwoods and, the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I'm like, normally you'd build kind of a low-lying flat, like ranch house or like a log cabin-ish kind of vibe to fit that environment. And I was like, what if you put a super modern design in the middle of like a forest? Like, what would that look like and feel like, And that was compelling to me. I think that both are awesome. Like if you look at the pyramids, if you put the pyramids, and there are many that we have yet to see that are in the middle of forests, they're not as like, oh my gosh, as something rising out of the Great Pyramid, rising out of, the desert in Giza. Like that's a stark, kind of contrast. I love that. I also love stuff that fits into, its environment better, right? I really do love both. And I think both have serve a purpose and are beautiful in their own way.
Yeah. I mean, I do tend to love the juxtaposition as well, especially old and new, when you have that kind of anachronistic thing going on, when you've got people modernizing old structures just by like gutting them. It's kind of like what we did here with our building. It's an old bank, and it's just kind of this concrete freaking tank of a building, but the inside is super modern and light. And like, you know, it's just, I love that. I also do appreciate when designers are like almost in a, like an Easter egg type of way, kind of like dropping little hints and nuanced things in there that you kind of like don't recognize at first, but then you're in it, you're like, holy shit, this is fucking genius like design. Like, how did they even? You kind of like you don't even ever realize it until you're in it almost.
One of my favorite spaces in the world to be in is an industrial building that's been that like space has been transformed into like a flat, like a one room living space, right? Where it's, you know, over in that far corner is the kitchen area, the loft, right? Like, and over here's the office space, and over here's the living kind of, you know, living room area with couches and TV and sound systems and stuff, but it's all one area. And then these big exposed beams, really high ceilings, brick walls with steel. That to me is like, that is my favorite space to be in the world. Like that's one of my kind of regrets in life is that somehow I haven't had, I lived it in a mini way when I was in my early 20s. I gutted my dad's garage and turned it into that, where it was all just one space. There was, you know, my weight set, my motorcycles, my bed, my, you know, my little dining room zone. And it was all just one space. And it was the most functional and fun way to live, you know, for me. And I kind of regret that I didn't somehow find a way to live that way, you know, throughout my life. And maybe someday I will find a way to do that, but I'm still trying to build a barn dominium on my property that I can move into. But yeah, that's my favorite. I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know what exists in that's so compelling for me,
but like, it's almost like, I mean, I think humanity kind of lived that way up until maybe like 100 years ago, right? One single room spaces, that was it. I mean, whether it was a cabin, a teepee, a cave, you know, like one space.
Yeah, and I'm really attracted to the idea that we don't have such bright lines between, let's say, work and life, or bright lines between life and play, or play and exercise, or art and work, you know, and when you have one big space like that, way over there is your kitchen, but you can still see it. It's still part of your experience, right? Even though it's, you know, 50 feet away in the other corner of the room. And so this blurring of those lines to me is really interesting. You know, about the way we live. It's like we go from this little box of experience to that little box of experience. Whereas there's something I think that we should get back to, or I think we'll get a lot of benefit as moving back towards this idea that it's all blurry. You know, it's all just the same fucking thing. It's all just life, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And that's another thing that's kind of like sort of recent in human history. It's like that modern concept of you leave your house and you go to work and you go to this other space, right? And it's like, that's also new. I mean, it used to be, I mean, most of the world worked on farms, and that was their living, that was their work, that was their everything. It was like,
or if you lived in a cave, you'd go harvest your wheat and then come back into your cave and freaking grind it and do whatever and cook it and do all the things right in your cave. You know, the other thing for me that was always interesting is
the community itself was all there too. Like everything was there.
Yeah. And I've always needed to be doing some sort of art, right? And so when my art studio is part of my living space, like I can be sitting there just eating my bowl of soup, looking up at the half-finished piece of art and get inspired and be like, oh, now I see that, and jump up, set the soup down, and go frickin' pick up the brush and start painting, you know? Whereas if you have your art studio as a separate space, you're not getting this kind of background, you know, inspired kind of thing where it's always there, half finished or started or whatever. It's like you got to go into this other space and then sit there and go, okay, and perceive the thing that you're working on, right? It's again, or maybe you're cooking while contemplating the piece of art that you're working on that's hanging on the easel or whatever, and your cooking's more inspired because the art that you're working on. I don't know. I just like that kind of interplay is, I think, really needed, and we've gone too far from that.
I mean, do you think I'd say unintentionally, but do you think we create problems that are unnecessary? Like, I just think as a society, you have this innovation, you have these options to create new things, but do those things need to necessarily be created? Like, I always wonder about that, whether or not was
Again,
that
is it necessity to serve?
exactly?
Is it the intention to serve based out of necessity, or is it profit only? Because the profit only is ugly.
Yeah.
It sucks. We don't need it, right? It's truly like, are we serving,
More money,
or
more problems.
are we just hooking
More
into
money,
like,
more
oh, there's people that will buy this, you know, and if I market it to them like they need it and they don't really need it, will they buy it? Now it's an ugly process. So yeah,
Yeah, it's
100%. I think that's
interesting.
happening.
So it's like, yeah, it's a, you go down the rabbit hole on that like real easily. It's just, you know, what is the process for that decision making? You know, like you said, I think there's a lot of unintentional things that people, you can't know what's going to happen. You don't necessarily understand. Like, I mean, there's a book called the Four Arguments Against Television. And it starts off, it's like, did anyone decide that television was going to be a good thing? No. Is it? Like,
Well,
you know, like,
this
I mean,
goes,
it's an
Rob,
interesting concept. Like, I mean, I think
this
television
feeds right into a conversation we've been having about, and this is Emily and I have been having this conversation about Instagram specifically. So we've all thought this thought, so it's not novel, but like the theory is, for me, this is what happened for me, is I went, wait, I'm being minute by minute, second by second exposed to the suffering and the problems of everyone around the world all at once, right? And I'm carrying that emotional burden. What I've come to find is that that's separating me from being connected to the people that the universe brings me in contact with on a day-to-day basis. And it used to be, if we go back far enough in time, that the news was simply, how are you doing today? You know, oh, how's the baby? Or what? Oh man, the business isn't doing well. How can I help? You know, it was the 50 or 100 or whatever people we came in contact with on a day-to-day basis that was our source of news and information, right? And that was our emotional connect. That was our emotional state. It was like, oh, my neighbor's not doing well, you know, or oh man, my neighbor just had a new baby, you know, like. And so I realized that I was exposing myself, and I think I'm hypersensitive to this, and I carry it maybe. I don't know what anybody else's experience is like, but it's really rough on me, is to be constantly bombarded with things that I can't do, that have an emotional charge to them for me, that I can't do anything about.
I think you're
Other than talk
aware of
more
that.
about them. Yeah. Other than talk more about them, which is not doing anything except propagating more of what I think my opinion is on something that I'm not actually in. And I'm not solving the suffering of those people in that minute. Yet I'm stepping over the guy on the sidewalk while staring at my phone who actually needs to be treated like a human being. Maybe he doesn't need my $5 in my pocket, but he needs me to actually acknowledge him as a human being. But meanwhile, I'm locked in on the suffering in Gaza that I really can't do anything about, right? But I can do something to treat this person like a human who's laying on the sidewalk, right? And so I just went, fuck it, I'm turning it off. And I deleted that shit, right? Because I'm trying to bring it back into a normal human existence. And how do I show up for youth to right now? Am I present with your emotional state? Am I sensitive to what's happening in what I believe the universe has dropped me in the middle of? Like the universe wants me right here, right now. And am I aware of that? Am I conscious of what's happening here? Or am I plugged into some shit that, yeah, man, my heart goes out and all I'm feeling all day long is what can I do? But meanwhile, I'm not doing anything for the people that are actually around me.
No. That's the problem
fuck that shit.
with it.
So you bring up TV. I think that you know, social media is just the furtherment of the same concept of TV, right?
You can extrapolate to all these things, all the modern technologies. It's like, why did anyone vote on social media becoming a thing? Is it really democratic? No.
Well, you vote with your attention. You know, the old saying is you vote with a dollar, right? But the truth is, attention is dollars now. I mean, that is the key to all media, right? Is where attention is there flows the dollars.
Social media.
So where are you putting your attention?
Yeah, I mean, there is, like, when Instagram, I don't know if it was first launched. I don't remember exactly when it launched, but I did use it in the early days as an artist and as like a place where I could just kind of disseminate my art and my thing and my messaging. And I thought I was serving a greater purpose through that.
Yeah.
But it's become the power of it and what it's done has superseded anything. I mean, of all that. And it's turned the majority of users into product.
Yeah.
So no longer are you a consumer or a producer. You're a product. Your data, your attention is now monetized.
Well, and there's also a more nefarious aspect that I think is very clear to those that utilize it this way, which is the emotional manipulation of masses, right? If you look at the
Oh yeah.
the oligarchs and dictators and whatever, that is the number one tool they use, right? Is the
There's a reason
emotional
why Elon Musk
manipulation.
bought Twitter.
Sure. And so,
There's
the
a very,
idea
very
is,
simple
yes,
reason.
on surface, it's a marketing device, and but a subtext is, I feel like we're being absolutely, we all know this, but we're being truly polarized right now. You're either on this team or this team, and we're forgetting that the real team is human, right? It's like, or even just life itself, like not even human, it's all life. Like we're getting pushed into these camps where neighbors fighting neighbor, in the front yard over shit that they don't even understand based on political things that are occurring on the other side of the planet. And yet they're not even present with each other. Like they're not even truly going, wait, we're in the same boat here. We're both trying to carve a better life, or like, we like, if you really boil it down, you take people that are theoretically on opposite ends of the political spectrum and you sit them down. And if you moderated that, you'd find that 99% of what they believe is actually pretty fucking much the same. And that really it's just different perspectives, and that it's, we're being taught and we're being manipulated into believing that we have these, we got to be on this team or that team. And I'm like, fuck the teams. I ain't even playing the game. You know what I mean? Like, so we have to be aware. We have to understand that we are the change that we want to see. We get to show up for that. But I'm saying that maybe we need to get back to the idea of think globally, act locally. Like just show up for the people. If you care about redistribution of wealth, redistribute your fucking wealth. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, don't wait for who them to do it or what we should all do. Fucking do it. You know what I mean? And so it's like, or whatever the idea is. I'm just using that as an example. But like, my point is like, we're not showing up. We're just plugged in thinking that's living. And this is that bridge, I think, into the matrix, right? Where we think we're living lives just being plugged into something else that's not even life.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean,
interesting
if
how
you
it's been.
go, Rob.
Yeah, I was just gonna, it's really. Read a cool thing about how, especially in this country, the digitization of everything and like that form of communication, whatever it may be, social media, just even just text, whatever it is, has enabled us to become like remote, right? We don't need to be geographically, physically located next to each other anymore. And that's allowed for this like dissemination of people, different perspectives and values, kind of like you end up in these different places where your physical community may not have really anything to do with you. And it's weird. It's just weird, like how that's created this different logistical dynamic in the way that we live, where we choose to live, how we choose to live, and like what communities we're part of. Like there are people that have entirely digital existences and have no connection to their physical community, but they're like they're in it. They feel like they're part of this thing, but it's so disconnected. It's problematic. Like back to your original point, it's like, yeah, are there things we're creating that are creating more problems than they're actually solving? Are they being intentionally? Are they trying to serve? Are they doing a greater purpose, serving a greater purpose? Hard, yeah.
So let's just say that there is a force behind governments that is the real mover of economies and the instigator of wars and the cause of famine and whatever. Let's just say that there is this kind of global elites or whatever, right? We all know that the thing that they need us to be in order to continue that rule that they have over everything is they need us to be separate. They need us to be misaligned. They need us to be arguing over things that aren't real, that are ideological in nature, that they tell us that you should either believe this or that. You can't believe both at the same time or whatever, right? That unification of the people, the idea that the people together unified can't be controlled by this small group of elites, let's just say, right? And yet The other way, so let's just say that the reason I liked social media in the beginning was that we could unify. It was a way to unify good, and they very quickly, whoever they are, got in there and were like algorithms to fucking keep these people separate and polarized and all the things. The other way that this could go down, where we can regain this kind of populist, like, control over our experience, is to shut it all down. Shut down all their controls of points of control, right? Shut down that thing that they're beaming into your brain all day long through social media and the news and TV and radio and all the things, right? Just shut it all down. And then what would happen is we'd be forced to work as communities, right? We'd be forced to rely on each other as human beings as we see and interact with each other on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm going, man, I really tried hard to kind of like carry a narrative of like, why can't we all unify, in our thinking, and why can't we find this common, what now I'm terming like the radical center? It's no longer radical to be on either end, it's radical to be in the center, and so, but instead of that, because I think that's a losing fight to try to create that through social media, and it's happening here and there, but ultimately I think it's easier just to shut it all down and show up as a human being, like just show up for the people in your life today that you come in contact with. When you go buy the bagel, how are you treating that person that's cooking that bagel and handing it to you? How are you treating the person that you come across on the street, or how are you treating the people you work with, or how receptive to them are you? How sensitive to their emotional state are you? And I am finding that that's the only answer at this point for me to like not melt down, like to not lose my crap, right? Is to just shut it all down.
Yeah.
Well,
And I think
Derek,
it's
you mentioned that Derek, you mentioned the kind of the emotional toll that it takes on you just by being experiencing all of this happening globally all at once. And sure, you could say that more is happening than there ever has been, but maybe we weren't all connected.
You just know
maybe
about
all this
it.
stuff
Yeah,
has been
no,
happening. Exactly.
The
Now
world
you just
has
know about
always been doing what
Correct.
it's doing, dude.
Correct.
You just know about it now,
Exactly. And so by like taking that approach, I mean, I started kind of just getting off of social media as much as possible. Haven't had it on my phone for a couple of years. And what was so interesting is when seeing that transition, because especially living in the marketing world, you have to be plugged into these systems because it's how the world is doing commerce. It's how the world's doing marketing. It's how the world's doing everything. And I've always had this conflicted side of being like, I have to live in this world, even though I know exactly what this world is and I don't like this world necessarily. How do you find a way to navigate it in the most authentically human way possible? Yeah. And a lot of that is not exposing yourself to it when you just don't need to,
the poison
and then interacting as you need to.
The poison is in the dose, right? So if you think about anything at the same time that it's nutrition, if you overdid it, it could be poison, right?
Yeah.
And so to some extent, I think that we forget the dose in our cyber world, our digitally connected world. It's now an inherent function of doing business and actually providing the good in the world that we want to provide, right? We need these channels to do that, marketing and emailing and whatever, all the things. Yeah. That said, anything can be poisonous if overdone, right? And I think that that's what we've forgotten is that. Yeah, there you go.
The rest deck.
The nap ministry.
Yeah, the nap ministry. How do you resist the grind culture? You rest.
Yeah. When I was a kid, my dad was a big fan of Muhammad Ali.
Rest is resistance.
That's exactly it, is the conscientious objector concept. So my dad was a big fan of Muhammad Ali. Therefore, I became when I was a kid, a big fan of Muhammad Ali. And his story around how he treated the Vietnam War and the way he gave up his title, the way he went to jail, the way he stood for, I am just not going to play your game. Even though I'm the most famous person on earth at that time, I'm going to refuse to participate in your bullshit, right? And he paid a price for it, but he also lived a life that will go down in history, I think, as meaningful for that thing. It could be one thing to be the greatest boxer of all time. You look at Mike Tyson, sure, he'll be remembered as the best boxer of all time. Muhammad Ali will be remembered for something different, right? And the way he, at a young age for me, that had so much meaning, the way he handled that when I was learning about it and reading about it and listening to his quotes and watching his interviews and how he handled the race questions and just went right back to not like black versus white, just like we're human beings, bro. Like we're men, we're equal here. And so many of those conversations. And then the way he just went, I refuse to participate in your war. I have no quarrel with the Viet Cong. Like, I love that statement. Always have. Like, they didn't do anything to me. Why do you want me to go over there and kill those guys? Right. And that just deeply, deeply moved me. And so I feel like we have that power. We forget we have the choice to not participate. Rob's nap culture, how do you resist? Right. Just back away, man. Just don't participate. And so how do I
delete the Instagram,
resist divisive politics? I just don't participate. I don't want to be in those conversations because they're all based in falsities. They're all based in propaganda. I don't want to play the game. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think to Steve, to your point though, it's like we're in it, like inevitably we are part of it. And like we are, even this podcast, I mean, it's going to be on YouTube and there's algorithms on YouTube and that whole thing. And I was thinking about that a lot this actually overnight and this morning before the podcast. I was kind of like, I was actually thinking about this very kind of question. Yeah, it's like, and I kind of came to this sort of revelation that like, it's sort of, since the game is there, right? You can't really, and somewhat relates to the dose. It's like you can't hate the game. You kind of hate the players. You hate the dose, like whatever that kind of, however you want to manipulate that intention there. But like, I think what we're doing has intention, and like to some extent, we're trying to like flood the zone with better content. If Instagram wasn't filled with all that shit, which is, I don't think we'll ever get there, but if it was filled with amazing intention and love and like people serving others, it might not be so bad to be on, right?
I agree with you, Rob, and I think we all had a hope for that when social media first kind of became a thing. That was the hope, right? But I think that the powers that be, infiltrated. I mean, dude, it takes very little for the algorithms to get me. You know what I mean? Like it just they get me, man. And I agree with you, Rob. We to fully like conscientious the idea of conscientious objector, like in the example of Muhammad Ali, he still did the interviews. He was still on TV. He still he didn't he just refused to participate in the narrative, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's not to say that we three shouldn't be doing anything on media here and that all media is bad. It's more of just refusing to participate in the paradigm, the narrative, like refuse that paradigm, whatever the grind culture or the identity politics or the polarization or the, spending time on the differences versus the samenesses. I think that if everybody gets back to the idea of love and unity, I know it sounds very hippy dippy, but just truly as I feel like it's a powerful thing. If you see yourself as a powerful person, it's really powerful to double down on love and unity, right? Than it is to be strong for your tribe or your fucking, your ideologies. Like, what about it takes a real powerful person to be open and accepting to everybody being a unique, different person, And so I think here, what we're doing is kind of refusing that narrative with some of this that we're talking about here.
Yeah. Going a bigger question actually for both of you. What problem, speaking of like humans, making problems, what problem are we solving? Because I think about that a little bit. It's like, there's the energy problem, there's the people problem, there's the access to energy problem. But like, what problem are we actually solving?
Agency. Human beings have forgotten that they have individual freedom and choice, even in the worst of circumstances. That if you look around and say, I don't have choice, you do. You still have choice. You just need to dig deep and figure out what that is. And it may just be between your ears, just how you choose to think, right? Or perceive the world around you. Yeah. But I think that the real problem that there is with all, broadly speaking, and then we can drill into energy, but I think it is individual sovereignty or agency or choice.
That's that has been,
they want us to believe that we have lost the power of choice. Whoever they are, right? Like the big machine, call it, doesn't want us to remember that we even in the idea of not being free, locked up in a prison, you still have freedom. You still have the power of choice. May just be as small as the what you choose to do in your cell, what you choose to read, or how you choose to think, but you still have choice. And so those of us that are climbing that ladder of choice, freedom, and agency, I think will have a broader impact. And I think that that's what we're intending to do here with energy, which is one of the most critical resources to human life or all life is give back some of that understanding of agency, of freedom of choice, of the ability to be empowered, right? And I think that's the problem that we Mint are trying to solve right now, is reminding people that they've subscribed to a model that says the one of the most inherent commodities, needed to survive, energy, let's call it electricity for now, that you have to basically rent it. You're not even buying it. You don't even keep it. You're renting it so you can survive, as opposed to the idea that what does it look like if you came to conclude that you could create it, own it, manage it, monetize it, share it. That's a game changer.
Fully. Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about the idea of real independence. These are you want to be off grid. You want to have your self-sufficiency. That it really does come down to energy. I mean, whether or not it's energy to use a tractor to work your farm, or just keep lights on, or keep your home heated, all these things, they all come from some form of energy. And then there's the more figurative, more esoteric version of like just personal energy and momentum to change, to do things. We're talking about energy here, right? The energy that's put into making people believe a certain thing or follow a certain paradigm. Like, energy is behind all of it. And the fact that you have you have the energy within you to make those choices, to change, to be the change, all those things are true at the same time. And so helping people see that, you have a choice. It really does come down to that kind of self-awareness discovery of like, you as an individual have a choice.
Well, and it requires somebody to spark it, right? Like, look at the Gandhi's movement, right? Here's the thing. All revolutions start with one thing, which is the realization that we don't need you. All monopolistic or, forms of control require one thing first and foremost: dependency. And so when you are fostering, or when there's a system that's creating more dependency, as opposed to fostering an interdependency, right? That's where the control lies. And so when you start to look at revolutions and how they start, and obviously some go good and some go bad, but they all start with the idea of, wait a second, we don't need what you've got. And by believing we need what you've got control over us. And so it's the refusal of what it is that they have used for control. And so I think energy is one of those things that we're talking about here that is a big lever in the idea that people can start to wake up to a life that says, I don't necessarily need some of what you say I need in order to survive, and therefore control me, right? And so I just like the idea of waking up to this collective idea, the idea that we collectively can be dependent on each other, but also be in an independent state and less dependent, because that's how kings rule. Bad kings rule, or dictators rule, is they create a dependency on either ideas, thought, education, commodity, space, land, whatever. You go down the list. And so I think we are interested in the idea of furthering or reinvigorating the notion that we do have sovereignty. We can refuse the thing that they tell us we need from them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with the power. I'm not saying it's about the utilities. I'm just saying it's a system, and we can start to move outside that system.
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, we are always going to be interdependent on many things, but the idea that you understand it, right? Like you were saying before, ignorance and fear are the two like weapons of autocracy or dictatorship, whatever you want to call it, and some kind of overarching rule that doesn't really consider the individual as a sovereign being. But yeah, the opposite of that is knowledge and love. And so if you can, part of that, what we're doing, we're educating, we're bringing knowledge. It's like, hey, you do have a choice. there are other ways. You don't have to subscribe to that paradigm. You don't have to do that. Yes, you're dependent on certain things, but there are other ways to go about that. There's other ways to do that for your own good, for your business, for your community. Like, we can think smaller, but still be impacting on a global scale, right? It's creating that model. It's like, you can do this here, you could do it there, and all of a sudden, all these different communities are all doing this thing, and it's creating a movement and inspiring others, and that is how it domino effects outward.
We forget how quickly that action is, right? How quickly that action takes form, which is the ripple effect or the butterfly effect or whatever, where we are trying to broadcast to the masses through social media what we think everybody should do, right? Versus if you just show up that way, each one reach one, be the change you want to see in the world, do the thing that you think is powerful and meaningful now. Somebody else is going to catch that bug. And then somebody else next to them is going to catch that bug. And that's in nature, dude, if you look at the
reciprocity,
or just look at fungi and the mycelium and how that there's a conversation going on across all forests connected globally that we're just now kind of starting to understand. Little subtle things are communicated that are happening locally, but have an effect at scale. And I think we have to remember that our actions, where we put our attention and time here today, has an effect at scale. We just don't see it in real time. And so we want to see it in real time. So therefore we go on social media and talk about what we should all vote for, or what we should all be doing, and I'm right and you're wrong. And well, how about just show up today with being the thing that you want to see, and let the effect take its course.
Yeah. Well, and I also I think about like the small actions that we do take can have that ripple effect. I mean, as a micro example, I was on a run yesterday in the morning and just ran by this guy that I thought I knew in town, and I was like, "Good morning," and not even the right person, right?
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. And for a moment, you're like, "Oh my God, what an idiot!" But then at the same time, you're thinking, "Well, if I send out good vibes to that
why
person,
not?
Why not?" Right?
And why the guy you know and not the guy you don't know? Like, what if you could just be that way with everybody, right?
Yeah, and that was the exact thought I had. Like, literally within like 10 steps, I was like, well, I'm stoked that happened. But that automatic reaction of like, oh man, but then I was like, oh, that could actually be a great thing. And it was like, who knows what ripple effect that can have, but it also didn't hurt my day.
And I had a real, sorry, bro.
No, I was gonna say, like, it's pretty crazy that we're coming like full circle again on this like idea. I mean, we're doing it now, right? That ripple effect is definitely exacerbated by this.
Well, I love that this is an authentic conversation between three people that want to talk to each other. Like, we'd be having this conversation whether the camera's on or not, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, there's an authenticity to it, I think, that creates a ripple effect, right? We're not trying to sell you something. We're just talking. I had a really, really powerful conversation with
expand the reach.
Yeah. I had a really powerful conversation with a homeless gentleman not that long ago. It blew my mind. And I got into this conversation, and one of the things I was asking I forget the actual, how it kind of came up, but I was essentially asking him what he needed most. And he looked me in the eye and he said to be seen and acknowledged as a human being. And that he would prefer that he be acknowledged as a fellow human being over being blindly just kind of handed some money with somebody walking by that really just acted like they're tossing some scraps to a dog. You know what I mean? And that changed my viewpoint on not just how I interact with those that are in need, but also how I interact in general with people, right? Is that to acknowledge, that idea that the Indians have of namaste, which is recognizing the divine in you while you recognize the divine in me. And it really was powerful. It just like hasn't left me. It's been kind of brewing in there, which is like, just what does it look like? What would happen to homelessness? And here in Santa Cruz, it's a big, big problem, right? It's all around us. What would happen if all of us just acknowledge those folks as human beings in just a smile, a look them in the eyes? How you doing today? We're afraid to ask how you doing today because they look like they're doing worse than we are. Maybe they're not. Maybe they've found enlightenment. Maybe they're doing better than we are, and we're just making an assumption, right? I'm just saying that we aren't like, that's a powerful thing that we forget, is this human connectivity that makes massive change. And I go back to like that idea of Gandhi's words and how big a movement he created by just showing up for people, Not to say that there's not a lot of good in all the things we can do with our capital and help people and provide, that's all great. But I think there's something missed when you think you're doing good by just tossing a dollar bill at somebody, as opposed to just like really acknowledging them as a human being.
Wow. Awesome. Derek, Rob, on that note, can't wait to dive into the next episode where we talk more about this. Seriously, like, I love where our conversations go, and thank you both for just showing up as who you guys are, and we'll continue to keep bringing the good conversation your way.
Energy is inherently a part of everything we do in our lives, but one of the least understood things.
I can see a future where there is limitless and free energy. And that's a pretty beautiful world to live in.